earlier in the day, the lead into it. It is the third Saturday in October. It is Alabama and Tennessee. In this game 2 years ago, shout out to producer Jordan, had us firing up Black and Milds on the Instant Reaction show. Because we weren't planning ahead that Tennessee was going to win. So everyone got the best cigar that they could to be able to celebrate the Vols' big victory.
Shout out to gas stations everywhere.
Shout out to gas stations everywhere for providing the high quality cigars to help us deliver the bit on a Saturday night instant reaction show on the Cover 3 podcast. And Danny, how does Alabama's got to play an SEC East team for the third game in a row.
Yeah.
God, this is a grind. I mean, they are so lucky that they were in the SEC West for all of those years and that they didn't have to play Vanderbilt, South Carolina, and Tennessee back to back to back.
That's right. I mean, the whole dynasty overrated. Would it even have happened if they were in the East? We don't know. This is another awesome matchup. I think with Bama. So both of these teams clearly have some weaknesses, right? That maybe we didn't see coming. And I think what's interesting is that it's opposite of what we've had in the years past. Like Tennessee's offense is struggling. Their defense is awesome. For Bama, their offense is carrying the team while their defense struggles. So like you've got these two opposing forces. Is this just what Tennessee needs offensively for Nico and company to face this defense to get them back on track? Or are they going to continue to struggle and Bama gets it right? And is Jalen Milroe going to play the role of hero yet again against this Tennessee defense, which is pretty filthy? I do think Alabama's offense has been a little bit too reliant upon Milroe and his legs and Ryan Williams to make a superstar catch. And so I do think Tennessee will probably have a pretty good game plan to try to slow Alabama down. So kind of the opposite of the other game. I think this one might be lower scoring because I don't know, even if Tennessee, as porous and as, many big plays as Alabama's given up, I don't know. I'm worried about Tennessee's offense. They just have not been able to execute anything.
I mean, definitely echo all those concerns. With Milroe, if you had kind of highlighted this schedule to start the year, the games in which you were like, okay, probably need to run him a lot because that's the most dangerous thing they have. At Wisconsin, before you knew Van Dyke was hurt and before you knew Wisconsin was just that bad. Okay. Georgia, Tennessee, at LSU, and maybe one of like Auburn or Oklahoma. You would not have said Vanderbilt. You would not have said South Carolina. But yet they did have to run him quite a bit in those games. Like he has really not had a break. This guy is so freaky. Maybe he just doesn't have any kind of slowdown in his game. But I do wonder also as a quarterback, like, do you think all the hits start to add up in terms of your throwing?
He got the crap kicked out of him against South Carolina.
Yes.
There were a couple times he got up and he just did not look quite the same. And that absolutely takes its toll.
I mean, I think Tennessee defensive line can cause some problems for Alabama. I'm not joking about this Bama on the road thing. Like that has been an issue. It has been a specific issue under Milroe. If you look at it, did McLaughlin have any bad snaps on the road at Oregon?
Not that I remember. I mean,
okay. Well, you know what? He had a
Will
lot.
Howard did drop one.
Will Howard dropped one, but I don't think it was. I don't know.
The snap was fine. Will Howard,
right?
Yeah.
Now I think this is something that DeBoer and Milroe will get cleaned up, and it probably won't be an issue. But I don't know that. I just think that was a problem for them last year on the road. Operationally, they were bad in terms of like when you give the ready call, remembering to give the ready call, clapping on time, like all that kind of stuff. You would see like an inordinate number of false starts and bad snaps from Alabama. That's not all on Milroe. Okay, there's other like communication that has to go on up front. But I am really curious how they handle a real road game. And with all due respect, like Vandy won on the field and deserved to win. But that was still like more of a Bama home crowd, right? Like, how do you handle it when it's loud out there? And I know these are kind of soft factors, but it's a real factor if you've played. Like, if you can't hear the snap count, you're a count late. Maybe James Pierce eats you up. I don't know. Although Florida handled it pretty okay. I imagine this crowd would be a little more jacked than that one was. I think the Peely injury matters a whole lot for Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Tackle
one of the
leader
guys.
out for the year.
That's one of the guys I had marked on my sheet preseason. I got with every team. I kind of go through. I'm like, all right, if they who can they really not afford to lose other than QBs typically? And Peely was one of the names I had for Tennessee. So does that impact their ability to run and pass game defensively? I think that's a possibility. On the other side, I know Tom's going to talk about Nico. I'm just cede the floor.
I mean, I was just wondering if this is the game where Tennessee's offense can finally get right going against an Alabama defense that's been a little soft at times, even if the numbers aren't terrible. I don't know. Like Tennessee does need to perform better offensively, particularly in the pass game. Nico does need to play better. Tennessee ranks 90th in EPA per dropback, but it is 26th in explosiveness, which kind of reminds you of what you're dealing with when you have a very talented young quarterback. The down-to-down efficiency, hit or miss, but the big plays, they're still there, and it also kind of just goes to play with Heupel's offense. But there were also times last week where the big plays were there. Nico just missed the throws. And like there was one, he underthrew a really bad interception. There was one, the guy was I can't remember who it was, but he was deep over the middle by 5 yards. He'd beaten his guy, and Nico overthrew him by another 5 yards. It's like if you just put that throw in the area, that's a touchdown. The other problem I think for Tennessee here is the offensive line stinks. Like the tackles that they're throwing out there are not playing SEC football. I'll just phrase it that way. I think that's the nicest way I could play it. I could also say they're not playing AAC football, but I'll just stick to SEC. The interior of the line is okay. Cooper Mays is the center, he's the best guy that they've got from what I have seen. It's not a coincidence that every single run plays in the A gap because the center is the only guy they trust to actually create a hole for him. But offensively, they've just been so disappointing. And Nico has been a big part of it. And I think that the receivers are not doing, I mean, the receivers aren't playing terribly. They are getting open. They are being missed, but I still think that they are not helping the cause as much as they could be. I think the offensive line is a huge, huge issue that I don't know if they can overcome it this year, not against really good teams. And I think Alabama, for all its warts, is still a very good team. But as Danny and Bud touched on, like, you can't just have Jalen be the entire team. And if you look at their run game, overall, they rank 16th in EPA per rush and 32nd in success rate. When it's just their running backs in the run game and Jalen, you take Jalen out of the equation, they're 55th and 88th. Like, you need to find a way to move the ball on the ground effectively without having to have Jalen taking hits repeatedly. Because if Jalen goes down, this team could be in some big trouble. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of questions about both of these teams that I don't think we have answers to. Maybe we'll get some of them in this game. Maybe we won't. Maybe these are just two talented but overly flawed teams that are just going to have to try to survive week to week to see how far they can get. But it is a very interesting game. And also, I think the one thing that is Bud hit on that I think is huge is Jalen Milroe in a stadium of 100,000 people, very, very loud, because they did have that game at Wisconsin this year, but that Tyler Van Dyke injury happened in like the first quarter and sucked all the air out of that stadium because they knew they had no shot once that happened. So how he handles that environment, how Josh Heupel tries to scheme some easy stuff for Nico early just to build up the confidence because he's played like crap the last couple of weeks. You kind of need to get him feeling good about himself early. I think that's going to be key. I think the first quarter of this game could decide the game.
So Bama's DC has only faced this, I think, one time when he was the DC at South Al, and they hosted Old Dom in 2022, which was that the first year Ricky Ronnie there?
22?
Yeah.
Ricky Ronnie might have been there earlier because I think Ricky Ronnie's
he was
first
an OD
year
by then.
Ricky Ronnie's first year was when they decided not to play and they tried to make a run at the UConn National Championship.
Okay, so he's been there for longer. So they won 27-20, which is not bad. It looks like the numbers from Old Dom were mostly okay. I'm not really sure how they didn't score. I'm always kind of interested. Like, does this certain coordinator have a history of playing a certain scheme well or not well? But in this case, I don't really think so. But clearly, like, people are going to watch what Arkansas did and what Florida did. And they're different plans. Like, there are similar elements, but they are different plans, and they'll see how much they can adapt it.
Also, I'm gonna go back to my lazy narrative, but that defensive coaching staff as a whole. I mean, we can talk about like, Kane Womack and sort of like his own experience with that. But let's see, what was your boy's name, bud? Joe Bowen. Okay. So Buffalo's defense in 2023 with Mo Linguist as head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo's defense in 2024 with Joe Bowen and his defensive coordinator. Alabama's pass defense in 2024. I mean, there's some connecting of those dots right there with that superstar defensive staff that they've got lined up.
Oh, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up. Linguist would have faced this when Sean Lewis was there, right? How long was Linguist at Buffalo?
Since Leipold, he came out. He was promoted from the staff when Lance left.
I really hadn't thought about that, but since we have so many guys who have been like coordinator, so he was 2021 to 2023, and Sean was there in 21 and 22, right?
Yes,
because he was 1 year Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So the 21 and 22 years, Kent State won 48-38 and 30-27. Now, granted, there's probably some ways you can't really play this in the MAC, and thus, like, I think why it worked.
Well, the level of athlete in the MAC is just superior to everywhere else.
Yeah, but like, how much disguise and stuff can you? This is a hard thing to disguise, and Bama's secondary has been sort of the weakness. So I don't know like how much they can get in for this. Maybe they can, but I have a hard time thinking that Nico and Bama and Tennessee can play like materially worse than they've already played. So I kind of think they're due for a bounce back.
Two things.
That makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Two things I took away from Josh Heupel's press conference. He mentioned it. Peely makes the calls, headset, in-helmet communications. So now we're going to have to be handing that off. Not only is your tackle leader, he is also legitimately we always talk about, he's not quarterback on the defense, coach on the field. Like, no, we actually have one. Peely was that. Number two, Tennessee fans have been playing the game. Who do you think he's talking about? Here's the quote. The question was if he thought the offensive line play improved from Arkansas to Florida. He says, at times, but still just not consistent enough. We need 5 guys operating as one. And a lot of times we had 4 guys operating as one. That's how we clean it up and be more efficient in what we're doing up front. So he's got his eyes on somebody that's effing up.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't played that game to try to like figure out who it is, but
it was Lance Hurd.
It is very clear that Josh Heupel.
Tom saw it.
Yeah, it was number 53, Chip. Lance Hurd.
Yeah,
it is. So Josh, you didn't want to put him on blast. We'll do that job for you here on the Cover 3 podcast. It's very clear that he has identified one of the places where Tennessee's offense is struggling.
I think Tennessee has bottomed.
I hope so. I want to wear my Nico shirt so bad.
Look, we'll see. I mean, this like Georgia, Texas heavyweight battle, 2 teams that we feel like are like really like good, and Alabama and Tennessee. It's like, all right, one's gonna like Alabama, Tennessee is a bar fight.
Yes,
like two very imperfect fighters. And this is then the primetime game in the SEC is more of like a heavyweight boxing match. All right,